I was prepared.
I'm sorry. What did you say? We were just going into the recording.
Dun showed me your YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some students set that up, and generally we can download the videos out of Skype and then upload them through the user the name that's associated with that channel, and whole bunch of guys get in there. It's almost a madhouse now. The last time I looked, there was about 230 subscribers and 430 something videos. Most of those videos have been done since October of 2018 because that's when Skype turned on the video service. Before that, it was hit and miss with whoever could do what, and most of them wound up being audio only. So the very old one will have a picture of Vicky Budagasa or something like that that some students put on it. But it's all a cooperative project.
Yeah. Nice.
Uh, uh, and right now, not very many people are doing very much with it. So it just kind of grows by video to video. Uh, anyway, um, Erik, you being at Kiem, there's several videos that have been done of me talking about Kiem, kind of in a way of inviting students to come and stay. And in fact, there's been several students that have been there that will probably have lingering names. Pablo was there for quite a while, about a month or so. And that was, gosh, more than a year ago.
Yeah.
And also, a friend of mine in some city in the middle of China, uh, Kobe, came from China last year, and he stayed at Don Kiem. So we have that kind of connection. Yeah, it's putting in a plug for Don Kiem. It's
Very-
it's a really great place, and you don't need much money. You hang
No.
out really cheap.
I pay 120 baht each month for my SIM card, and that's it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I spend 120 baht each month for my SIM card, and that's my only expense so far.
120 baht. That's like $3 a month, huh?
Right.
I also note above your head the old traditional style of mosquito netting
Yeah.
with the umbrella and all.
Yeah. I'm on in the sala by the lake, and I actually sleep
Oh, I
here.
know exactly where you are.
Yeah, I set it up so I actually sleep here
Uh-huh.
until the
So
mosquito.
over your left shoulder is the dormitory, about 100 yards or so.
Exactly. As that is
You're
meditation hall,
oh,
and
yeah,
dormant
right. I see
is
the right. That's the one over in that direction.
yeah.
How many people are there now?
Right now, there's just 5. We have one Russian monk, and then one Kiwi, me, one Estonian, one Russian layperson.
Okay, the Russians have come.
Yeah, Russian Eastern Europeans.
Yes, they're in fact Americans are in the minority, but that's only because that Eastern Europe and Russia and places like that are so much closer to Thailand than America is. Wow, what a trip!
I was actually coming from India. It wasn't a long trip for me.
Where and how long were you in India?
I was volunteering as a teacher in a village for 4 months
Uh,
in Assam, which is in the northeast of India.
I also spent quite a lot of time in India way back when, before I came to Thailand. In fact, I heard about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa while I was in India by a Thai monk at Bodh Gaya.
Yep.
Okay, so uh, where did you hear about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa? How did you wind up in at Kiem?
Well, I did the 10-day retreat here at Nanachat.
At,
That's
oh,
how,
at what? Panana Chat, huh? Oh, no, you're talking about the International Dhamma Hermitages, the Nana Chat. Right, okay.
and then I got there from the website of the Thai Forest brand of Western monasteries.
Okay.
And I got there because a friend was reading a book by Ajahn Sumedho
I know
in
Ajahn Sumedho.
Plum Village in France. And I won't even go back farther and tell you how I got to France.
Never mind, that's far enough back. That's good. Okay, so
Get on with
um,
the
pardon?
we get on with the kalamas.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So we were talking about kusala. The word kusala comes from a kusala grass, and that is like lemongrass. Only the limb or the leaves are bigger, thicker, broader, and the serrations on the sides of the leaf are stronger and tougher. So they would cut this kusala leaf off and dry it under a wood or a brick or pressure or whatever like that to get it flat and straight as it's drying. And then they would use it as a knife. That knife would cut bread, it would cut all kinds of things, it would cut cloth, but it wouldn't saw wood because that would destroy it. So kusala means the ability to cut into, and that has to do with with the idea of dissection, and that there's many ways of doing that. In fact, the word vipassana actually means to go into, and so kusala means to be able to cut it so that it can be open. Where a kusala means that either the knife is already broken or that the object is not cuttable.
Right.
So that's how we can take this as a base, and that the English language word skill, um, there's other things. For instance, in the Anapanasati Sutta, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as train or training. Okay, and the Pali word bhawan is also that way, like a Deepa bhawan, or another way of saying it, depending upon the pronunciation, is bhavana. And so you have Bhante Gunaratana's place in West Virginia called the Bhavana Society, okay,
Yeah.
which that means to also this training. And so that's really at the base of what we mean by skill or skillful. And that when I'm teaching Anapanasati, I generally use that word skill in the sense of skill development, like someone would practice the piano to gain the skill of being able to play the piano. So this is how we then mean by skillful, but kusala or wholesome or the ability to get the job done is really where we're going with, and that's also a skill to be developed. In that
Yeah.
regard, they're both correct, but looking at it from two different angles.
Right.
Okay. So um, anything else about the Kalama Sutta? Because it's really, really chocker block full of stuff. I know what you're talking about in the sense that um, there are actions that are wholesome and skillful. that he's
Yes.
talking about. And that's when he is actually getting ready to launch into asking the Kalamas the question of killing. And then he goes through uh, stealing and whatnot like that. Is this wholesome or not wholesome? And then he brings it into the realm of the um, second noble truth. Greed, ill will, and ignorance are mixed in there.
Yeah.
So there is quite a combination of stuff to guide the Kalama people into recognizing that they have to answer the questions for themselves. Um, because their original question was that they were kind of swamped. They didn't know who to believe because there was a lot
Exactly.
of traveling, and at that time there were. In fact, one of the groups was noted by that because one of the teachers that the Buddha himself had before he became enlightened was Allah Kalama. And so there's that connection between one of his old teachers and his relationship to that village.
I didn't even catch that.
Um, so getting back to the idea of the translations, um,
Yes.
the the Thai, uh, especially with some of the stuff that they did with it during the 1930s, to kind of reform it and get a better translation out. And so there's actually now, I think, three different translations of the Pali Canon in the Thai language. Uh, but one of our friends who had been down here, uh, his name is Robert, and now he's living in uh, outside of Chiang Mai, and he was trained in Thai language in the U.S. by the Mormons before he came over. And so he began to start speaking Thai to the kids, and then he got good at it with the adults. Now he does things like contracts, business contracts for English to Thai and back and forth. But he's also doing some translations of stuff of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, including the Anapanasati Sutta. So he is my basic reference for what the Thai version or the Thai translations of the sutras have that are different than the English. And it's quite revealing.
And Dhammarato is also doing translations of Anapanasati. So everyone is translating Anapanasati again.
He's
There's
working with Robert on that, I think. Or they're working parallel, or they're working on a different book. Because Anapanasati is a favorite topic of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa.
yeah.
Mine too.
And then there's this other Pali word, Savaja. Do you have any clues about that one?
Uh, no,
Okay.
sorry, I don't know that one.
Okay.
But if we can
Then
break it down, Saba, like this actually means always. Like Saba Astava Sutta is all the tanks.
oh,
So we're
he
talking about Saba Ja, and I don't know what Ja is in this context, but that would the way that I would look at the word.
proposes to split Sa plus Avaja.
Pardon?
Here it proposes to split Sa and Avaja.
Okay. There's people who know Pali a lot better than I do.
Okay, moving on. Then, so Buddha goes through defilements and traditions, and then he comes to spreading goodwill and compassion in the four directions.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. Metta, Karuna, Mudita,
Mudita,
Upekkha
yes.
in the four directions.
Right.
So
Those are known as the Brahma Viharas.
the four fronts. But Brahma Viharas would be holy something something.
Vihara is actually the word for home or house, and that's what the Wats are called in Sri Lanka, is a Vihara. And the shortening of that word, like the Thais are prone to do, give us the word Wat, which actually is. And then you can further go into Vihara and look at the same prefix like Vipassana and other uses, which the word V means into. And then the rest of the word is hara, and hara is the word that we have even down into English as the word heart or the core. And that the word hara is actually one of the words that I've heard in India quite often, or the home or the heart. And so vihara actually then is the word that's used for residence. It's our home. So Brahma Vihara depends upon how we use the word Brahma. And that as you have indicated using the word holy,
Yes.
the Buddha generally would take the word Brahma and twist it around in its nature. But where the source of the term Brahma Vihara comes from, I'm not sure. I think, in fact, that term came before the time of the Buddha and was already in use, like other words like nibbana and other things. So,
For political, the Brahmins.
precisely, right, got
Yes.
political stuff in there too. So, uh, uh, another way of thinking about it is the home of the gods who are above the world or supramundane, or the Pali word is lokatara or transcendent. So that's another possible use or the meaning of the word Brahma, is in the sense of we're above all of this. And when you look at the constituent components of Brahma Vihara, then you see Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha. That
Yes.
Metta is very much wrapped up in the term with Kalya Metta. And the way to introduce that, and it's got a lot of different features to it. And one of the ways of introducing it is that though Ananda spent his time with the Buddha as most he could, he was in fact a student of Sariputta. And the Sariputta was around the Buddha, but not next door or sitting beside him all the time, because he managed many individual students back in the time when the Dhamma was always taught basically one-on-one with maybe a few friends sitting by and listening in. But that was always the traditional teaching, because basically we have to confront the student out of his delusional system. And you cannot be confronted out of your delusional system by reading a book.
Because you choose the book and you choose the time, and it always fits with you if you read a book.
Right. Not only that, but there's no place in the book, like on page 98, it says, "Hey, why are you here? You should be back on page 2." You've been reading too far ahead and not doing the exercises. Or kind of like a musician trying to play a piano piece that he's heard he likes, but it's too hard for him. Not with the score that he's got. He needs a simplified version of it because he can't keep up with the professional musicians who are making a fortune out of that catchy tune. So it's the same situation, but the teacher can always grab the student back and say, "No, come back, and because this skill you need to develop first before you go off in that direction." And
Right.
so that's part of the value of having that individual attention that went right back to the time of the Buddha, and that was the kind of attention that I got from Achan Po at Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And so I've developed that kind of style for the internet.
Wow. So do you meet regularly with your students?
Pardon?
Do you like meet regularly with your students?
Whenever they call, because I don't keep any schedules.
Yes.
I don't even intend to try to remember what we did last time with any individual student. I try to kind of meet them where they are right now.
Okay.
But then there's a lot of stuff that happens that goes on in the day-to-day living that I'm not sure is done so much. Uh, but let us say, first off, do you know Achan Meti?
Yes.
Does what he does tend to surprise you?
Yes.
I rest my case. Good. He's a friend of mine, and he's got something going, but he's also dedicated to the Dhamma.
Yeah, we went backpacking together for 3 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're lucky. Wow. This is called Tudong, or Tudonga in Nepali and Tudong in Thai. Is that the word they used? He was using Tudong rather than backpacking?
He didn't say that. He said we'll go walking together.
Yes, that's it. Right. That's Tudong. That's the walkabout, and they do it in Thailand. So you're getting,
Full
wow,
sizes.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Wow. Yes, been there, done that. So, um, getting back to the Brahma Viharas now, the first one is metta, and the metta goes through the idea of Kalya metta, which has to do with friendship. So Ananda asked his teacher Sariputta about what role does friendship play, because he's kind of heard that the monks were talking about it. And the
Yes.
Sariputta answer was, it's half the Dhamma. Like, it's half the Dhamma, you dunce. And so Ananda snuck away to the Buddha, like, uh, this is what Ananda said. And the Buddha's answer was, no, friendship is all of the Dhamma. It's the whole thing. Now, what does that mean? If you look at it from the, let us call it technical lens, uh, there are 10 fetters.
Yes.
One of the high fetters is that of conceit or mana. And what that means is that we um, compete with each other for limited resources, so that we wind up not having good close friends because we're competitive instead. That in fact, the competitor, the ones that we compete with, we think of as our enemies. Maybe not strong enemies, but and so a great deal of the Dhamma then is learning to become friends with everything, everybody, to open up and stop being in competition with anything at all. And so at that kind of level, you can say, oh, now I understand the role of metta and the role of opening up, because the whole intention of the metta and spreading it is that it's you that's getting the benefit from that, not the world itself. There's actually, the world can help itself, and it generally does, but it's not going to be happening through any metta that I'm spreading. But it does have an opening of the heart, or an opening or a letting go quality to it that almost is subterranean. And we don't really want to tell the teachers that underlying current of it, because they like the magical part. So, in fact, when we talk about metta, we're talking about it in a way of, it's a magical way of explaining what's really going on. And what's really going on is that we're beginning to lose our fear, because we're no longer afraid of anything. And you know that the Buddha talks about becoming fearless. Okay, well, if we're no longer afraid of people, then we don't compete or show off, or we just see them as friends instead. And so this is the foundation of this whole quality, and that's why we can, in fact, live like gods, is because we live magnanimously or nobly. This is part of the noble quality of the teaching that I think is practiced in a kind of weird way, because it's gotten kind of singy-songy or put into um, um, a mantra, not a mantra, perhaps even the chanting of a sutta. In fact, Mahamagala Sutta is quite often chanted by the monks. And when they teach students metta, they generally do a stylized version of it. Okay. But a better
Imagine
way to go ahead.
light. Imagine yourself filling with light and then spreading the light. And
Okay. But
that's why I've encountered metta meditation before.
well, let's focus in on it just for a moment. The word imagine. In a way, when we imagine something, that's it. That is that we're trying to create something that at this point in time is not real.
Yes.
It's kind of, in fact, a hope. Now, I think you're seeing where this is going, because one of the classical definitions of the word dukkha, or dissatisfaction, is wanting something you don't have. Yeah, go ahead.
So then, imagining something is a sort of suffering, by definition.
Precisely. We're imagining with the wanting and the longing and the whole idea of imagining it. But there's another way of talking about it so that it becomes more practical, more real, and not so magical at all. And it's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end.
And what is it? Now I'm interested.
And that is going back to anapanasati, by gladdening the mind. In other words, we begin to practice to gain for ourselves and put our own mind in the state that we now have something to share rather than something to hope over.
So, gladden the mind and then park there, or do you gladden the mind and spread it in the four directions?
um, Both
Okay.
and neither. Uh, but let's stay with the both part. I think you'll figure out. In the meantime, um, the way that I teach anapanasati is what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, actually, I know from him personally, though he teaches it in organized method, it's actually to be practiced in the natural method. And the reason that it's taught in the organized method is because that's how the Buddha taught it. And the organization is Kaya Nupassana, Vedanupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana, and then in that order. And in fact, all of the steps of Anapanasati, right through step 16, in each of the tetrads, you can see the number of it. In fact, though it's not in the Pali, I've got them on in my own book, lettered or numbered. This is number 8, 9, 10, etc., like that. And so I often refer to them by that numbering system. But have to make sure that the students understand that we're developing a practice that requires all of those kind of skills to be developed, and that they can't be developed in the order that they are listed in the organization.
This is how I got to the Kalama Sutta, because you know the green book with the tree on the cover? That is Santi Caro's translation of. So that is
Mindfulness while breathing, I think, is the title of it.
Yeah, I used to have it here. Anyway, and then Dhammavidu says, we'll start with step 1 and then go to, I don't remember, step 12 or something. And then Thich Nhat Hanh says, go in any order. So everyone says Anapanasati, but all of the different orders are sort of melting my brain. And then, so that was how I came actually to the Kalama Suttas. I wanted to figure out, like, okay, how do I sort out from all of the different teachings?
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure that we can use the teachings in the Kalama Sutta, but at the end of the sutta, the key word is if.
Keyword is if?
People, if. That's the key word. If there is another world, then you'll get the benefit of having correct sila. And if there is not, you still get the value right here as in a happy life. Okay, so that's how it ends. So let's look at it from that kind of context, but rather let's look at it in the sense of how the mind works. And basically, the way that I'm speaking now, I would say I got more from Goenka than Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And so I've kind of combined them a little bit together, because I spent quite a lot of time with Goenka before I went to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. And so Goenka says, never mind, start again. In that regard, he's talking specifically about sati. Never mind, start again means start at what? But whatever we're going to start, the first thing that happens is the never mind part, which is the wake up. Okay, so we can say the first thing that happens is sati. All right, now sati, or waking up, is in fact on the Eightfold Noble Path. And in fact, the Buddha actually listed as number 2, not number 7 or 8 in most of the list. But in this particular sutta, he talks about, first off, that right view comes first. In other words, we're going to intend to wake up to this. So the intention of right view comes first. Then sati. Now we remember. Okay. So the next one is right effort. And then the fourth one is right attitude. So let's go with that. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, in fact, was quite big on right attitude. So sati comes first. If we look at it that and put it in reference to Anapanasati, we can see that that's, in fact, that wake up is to experience the mind, at least in the sense of, am I watching the breath or not watching the breath? All right. That little point then is actually step 9 of Anapanasati, is experiencing the mind. And then we go to the Satipatthana Sutta and we start looking at what do they mean by experience the mind. And there the whole thing is laid out about, is it bright, is it shiny, is it dull, is it operational, what quality of the mind that we have going on, and all of that kind of stuff. is to be investigated in time. But the first thing that we noticed was, hey, I'm not doing what I thought I was going to do.
Yes.
And that's sati. Okay. So then the next thing is to remove, now that we know that the mind is in hindrance, then the first thing to do is to remove that hindrance, which takes some effort. Okay. The effort. What is the effort? Okay, is to throw out the hindrance, and that you probably have understood that in Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's teachings about Paticca Samuppada, that he really does go back to the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha figured that stuff out while he was alone in Bodh Gaya for about 6 weeks, right? That's why Bodh Gaya is so famous. This is the place that's enlightenment. What did the Buddha do while he was there was to put this stuff together, and the key phrase that he used was, aha, I see you, Mara. Think
And
about
you
that.
burns the ridgepole of the house and tears the
What?
house down.
Well, uh, yes, that's exactly what we're about to do right this very minute. Okay, is to pull that ridgepole out. Another way to talk about it is to flip the switch. The lights are off. Here's the light switch. We just flip the switch and the lights are on. All right. Just grab that tent pole and rip it out. Okay. That's all it takes. But we have to do that 10,000 million times, maybe. Who knows how many times to do it? But we got to do it every time we remember it. That's part of the practice of Anapanasati is first we remember, and then we take the right effort to rip that thing apart. And the way that we do that is with that phrase that the Buddha used, aha, I see you, Mara, or I see you, hindrance, or I see you, anger, or I see you, whatever has come up into the mind, okay? This is,
Right.
in fact, where we merge that together then at step 10 of Anapanasati, which is the gladdening the mind. Why is that gladdening? It's not that, oh no, I see it now. No, that's the way of a victim. We're going to be champion over this. And so, aha, I see you is a gladdening of the mind quality. To get the mind really, really, I've got it, okay? Got it by the tail. And in that regard, we also, um, in the way that is called uh, doing what had to be done so that there's nothing left to do. A job well done. It's also part of that phrase about uh, pure as a polished shell. Okay, with the job well done. Well, here is the point that we recognize that the job is well done because what did we do? We woke up enough to say, aha, I see you, Mara. That's a job that's well done. And that's the right effort that we took. Along with that, we take a deep breath. We begin to the restorative process. So there are two kinds of efforts. One is to exhaust the mind, and the other one is to exhaust the body, in the sense of this is why step one of Anapanasati is knowing a long in breath and knowing a long out breath. This is the first step of Anapanasati. When do we do that? When we remember.
No other time
Okay,
you can do it.
pardon?
There's no other time you can do it.
Exactly so.
Ah,
So that's why this moment of sati is so powerful. That's why we want to develop it as a skill, but
yes.
also to develop right effort as a skill. And that as we do that, right view will become more noble. And then the
Yeah.
final one of the four is the right attitude is that we begin to have on the attitude, I can do this. I can fix this. I'm capable of being able to um, rid my mind. And
Yep.
so this is an important quality of, or the idea of the Buddha being a lion, that we're no longer under our own pile of mess. One student said it like this, it's just beautiful. He said, everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt.
It's my dirt pile. Don't touch it. My dirt pile is bigger than yours.
So
So,
basically what happens, though, is that people wind up sometimes being buried under their own pile of dirt, which is that's quite a hindrance. But if
yeah.
we're sitting on top of that pile of dirt, that is literally being on top of the world. That is literally letting go and becoming lokatara, or becoming transcendent, going into that world that we talked about before of the Brahma Viharas. Okay? This
Yeah.
is how it kind of goes in that letting go process that is part of the attitude that we're no longer buried under it. We're on top of the world. This is what is referred to now as step 5 of Anapanasati. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has got some really brilliant things to say about this. But the Pali word you've often heard is piti.
Yes.
Okay. This is what we mean by that is the attitude of the winner, or being successful having done the job. And we develop that slowly over time as a skill, because most of us are trained as uh, victims of the society, victims of our education, victims
Yes.
of all kinds of things. And so we wind up being victims to our own mind, victims to our own laptops. Some people become victims of Kiem, quite possible. But when we are no longer with the attitude of being a victim, that this is hard work, but come to the point of, oh, I can do this.
Yes.
I can put out the right effort so that I can get this thing done. And we practice that over and over again. So that would be the incorporation of the Four Noble Truths right into Anapanasati. I think there you are. You're back. Okay. You were gone for a moment.
Explaining the incorporation.
Pardon? Pardon?
You're explaining. You're explaining, and then how does the second noble truth come in?
The second noble truth is actually what we did was I see you, Mara. Mara is the second noble truth, and Mara has 3 daughters. The 3 daughters are Moha, Lobha, Dosa, or greed, ill will, and ignorance. And
Yes.
so when we see I see you, Mara, that means that we've seen one of the daughters, or we see it in ourselves, or we see it as a hindrance.
Then step 3 is, I guess, the right attitude. Like we already know that the end of the suffering is possible.
Because you just made it. You
Invented it
have
yourself.
just now come to a state of satisfaction. Okay, so in fact, what we've done now is we said we started to step 9, we went to step 10, then we went back to step 1 again, we revisited that, and now we've come to step 5 of the success. Step 6 then is the magic place. That's the place to stay. What is that word? In the Pali, it's sukha.
Yes.
In the Thai language, it's sukh. We have duk and sukh, or sukha and sukha. All right. If you probably have figured out, if not seen it in the Pali dictionary, that these are actually antonyms or opposites. So if you are in fact, a state of sukha, then in fact you are not in that moment in a state of dukkha. Right?
So then step 6 is actually the end of the path.
Step 6, in a way, is at the end of the getting on the path. The staying on the path is a little bit more, or getting back on the path over and over and over again every time we get off the path. So there's 2 qualities to it. But let's look at that point of sukha, and But by the way, let's put it back in a different frame of reference. If we look at the Anapanasati like that, in the sense of the Eightfold Noble Path that we've been discussing partially, now we can look at it from the perspective of the jhanas, because there is a place in Sutta number 36 where the Buddha says, I've got it. And in fact, this was the game plan that he was using when he went to Bodh Gaya.
Yes.
Because the story is he crawled out of a creek, understanding that if he can't even crawl out of a creek, how can he have the strength to become enlightened? And he already was going after enlightenment meant free from suffering. And then he had that remembrance of, and this is actually quite famous in the name of the rose apple tree. Do you know the story of the rose apple tree?
This was a new story for me.
Pardon?
This is a new story for me. I haven't heard this before.
Okay. The rose apple tree is the time when his father, the Sakyan, was performing a ceremony of plowing, and that he was sitting under the shade of a rose apple tree, and that he went into first jhana. Now, how old he was probably about 12 to 14, but another question to ask was, where did he learn how to do that? Because that's a whole new story in itself. The guy who taught him how to do the first jhana at that age was the very same one who was sitting at the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, who got it on Buddha's first sermon, enough to become Sotapan right on the spot. Why? Because he already had that quality and trained the Buddha in it from the first place. So here the Buddha is now, after having gone through all of the jhanas of various teachers, figured out that that was not the path. Why is it not the path? Because when the dude comes out of the jhana, he literally is out of it, and he's right back where he was starting again. And that's what the Buddha was confused about. Doesn't matter how sharp I can get my mind, that when I come out of that sharpness, I'm lost again. And the same thing with the austerities. So he practiced the austerities later under, probably under Nataputta, who was also known as Mahavira during the Jain thing, when the Jains were really heavy into their crazy torture. And that was when he starved himself to the point of becoming the fasting Buddha, or the starving Buddha, that's own statuary at Wat Suan Mok and all over the place. You've probably seen those statues of the starving Buddha, right? Okay. And he figured out that too. In fact, he was probably in that kind of condition when he fell into the creek.
And he starts off the Dhammacakka whatever sutta by saying, I found the middle way.
The middle path, exactly.
Not self-mortification, not indulgence.
Now, we can think of that. Let's wait on that for just a moment, because I want to get to something else, but I will get to that part of the story. Okay? The point here is that when he was then reflecting upon that first jhana, that's when he came to understand it is it. That's the first jhana, and that is the path to enlightenment. It's the first jhana. That the problem with the jhana dudes were doing was, after they got the first jhana, instead of doing what they needed to do with it, they merely went on to the second jhana, thinking that that was better. But in the process, they lost something, the ability to think.
So in first jhana, there's a sustained concentration on the object of meditation.
No, let's not go there. Okay. But, okay, first off, even the word samadhi is not used until the second jhana by the description. Let's look at what the Buddha is talking about as the first jhana, because we've just discussed it already when we were talking about these various steps of anapanasati. Okay. So the first jhana is described as the rapture and pleasure, or the sukha, that's born of the seclusion from the hindrance. So the aha, I see you, Mara, is throwing out the hindrance, and at that point now we are free from our and no longer bound to that hindrance, therefore giving a chance for, if we develop it, for piti and sukha to arise. And the piti and the sukha is in fact that attitude of, I can do this. I can throw the stuff out of my mind. I can do that anytime I want to. And then it comes to, I can do that anytime I want to, no matter how tough that hindrance is. And when we come to that step, that is in Sutta 48, where it talks about the first step on the noble path. When no matter how obstructed the mind gets, the student knows that he can throw that stuff out and come back to this present moment and be here now to see what's going on in reality. Then the Buddha says, this is the first knowledge that is super mundane, Paraloka again, or Lokatara, excuse me, also transcended as super mundane. It is noble. It's a factor of the path, and it is not shared by ordinary people. Why? Because ordinary people are generally victims. But here we have winners on our hands. Okay, so that's what we can say. It doesn't matter how obstructed the mind gets. Doesn't matter how long the line in the visa office gets. Doesn't matter how many times I have to go back to the visa office to get the paperwork right. It doesn't matter whether I miss a flight or not. Those are just all possible hindrances. And almost always the problem is in the mind anyway. Okay, so when we come to that, now that's a pretty good winner's attitude, isn't it? I can handle anything. It doesn't matter how obstructed my mind gets. I can clean it out.
So then in the Anupada Sutta and also in the short sutta on emptiness, Sariputta, or in the other sutta, a random monk, they go through the first four jhanas, and then they go through four material concentrations, and then they have some deep penetrative insight into reality, and then they're enlightened. And then what you just told me now is similar to what Buddhadasa says. It's similar to what Thich Nhat Hanh says. And all three of you say, you actually don't need that much concentration. You need some amount, but then really go for insight. And so then how do you put together like the perspective in just enough concentration versus what a few suttas say about going for all the jhanas and all the immaterial whatever is in them?
Okay. It depends upon whether you're going through the long, slow process, going, let us say, on a triangle, like a sliding board. That you can either go from A to B by climbing down the ladder and then walking to the end of the sliding board, or you can take the direct approach and slide downhill. This is what is actually meant when Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about the shortcut method. Going the direct one, which is what the way that the Satipatthana Sutta opens, is in this is the direct path. Then in Thai they call it, this is the shortcut. And the shortcut in that regard means that we're actually going to be doing both going down and going forward at the same time that we're coming down the hypotenuse, which means that we're going to be developing insight and jhana kind of together. But we're doing it right, because the guys who develop the jhana, it takes a long time to them to figure out Paticca Samuppada, and a long time to figure out jhana, where in fact it's all laid out. And if we get insight as to how to do it, it can be done easily. It's
So
not
then,
such a hard deal. The guys that have the really hard approach are the ones who have to do it with the jhana first. This is the long, slow, hard process.
Okay.
Does give good results, but it's not for me. I'm on the slow, easy, thank you.
So then, okay, when I start my meditation session, I'm following my breathing, and then like some happiness arises. Maybe I get into like a trance or something. Then do I like do something to start Vipassana, or I just like keep going and let it be sort of natural?
All right. Now,
Yep.
the
Sorry.
way that it is talked about in the Anapanasati Sutta, keeping in mind that by the time that we get to this state of sukha, we have in fact fulfilled all of the factors of the first jhana in the following way: by taking the deep breath and focusing the mind, and I'm just using the word focus here, on the fact that we have just done this sequence of events, bringing about this state that is in the Pali, and it's actually in the Anapanasati Sutta of the Ityapata, the four powers, and that the four bases of power are in fact the parts of the Eightfold Noble Path. There's where you find sati. There's where you find investigation. There's where you find um, uh, the the joy and uh, the changing of attitude. So the Eightfold Noble Path is actually the basis of the power, but the word siddhi has been used in the Sanskrit to generally mean magical power. So Ityapata also sometimes becomes magical power, which is, diving in the earth and swimming and walking on the water and passing through doors and mountains and clear out, that kind of magical stuff is the power. But there's another kind of power, which is the one that the Buddha is talking about. And what is that power? The power of satisfaction, the power of success, the power of contentment, the power of security. So these are the powers: the power of security, safety. Another word we could use would be satiation. That I've got it. Okay, real satisfaction. And this is a skill to be developed, and we practice it over and over and over again. Whenever we remember. Okay, so this is step 6 of Anapanasati, and we're developing so that it becomes a very powerful part of the package of our developing first jhana. The other part now becomes quite interesting when we talk about the next quality of the first jhana is applied and sustained thought,
Yes.
which means that we can apply it where we want it to be applied. In this regard, this goes back to that word on kusala and akusala. We're going to apply the mind on things that are wholesome and not allow the mind to stray into unwholesome things. And that we're going to not only apply the mind, but we're going to sustain it in the sense of staying on guard to only allow wholesome things into the mind and not allow unwholesome things into the mind, because the unwholesome things, in fact, will take us out of this state of first jhana. We crash land back into hindrances again. Okay?
Okay.
That's okay. So now we're beginning to understand, oh, this is all about the development into being able to get into and then maintaining this first jhana, because it's really worth the investigation that it takes to make that judgment about being on guard for, is this thought kusala or akusala? Is this skillful? Is this wholesome? Or is it not? And we can apply that to an internet search. We begin to apply that to all kinds of things, but in this first jhana state, while we're practicing, we make sure that the mind does not go into, for instance, the past, because the past is more than likely not going to be up to our current standards. So as long everything we do now that we remember that happened way back when, I could have done it better. Yes, you could have, and you can do right now better by stop thinking about it because it's in the past. It's dead.
And then when I'm in first jhana, do I take my mind to any topic in particular, or I simply avoid unwholesome topics like the past?
There is an entire forest of trees of individual wholesome things that I can give you as a list.
Okay, I'm ready to start typing.
Here now is the overall concept of be here now. That's what it's really all about. That's what first jhana is to apply the mind and sustain it on being here, being present,
Yes.
being in the moment, and not being in the past or the future. Those are hindrances. Okay, that's basically it. If you think about it, this is all now I have to do to practice is to get into this state and then learn to maintain it. Because every time I come out of it, it's because uh, the old personality had taken control, or let us say the karma had taken control. The old actions or the old habits come back very easy. So we have to keep remembering.
That is the same thing Dhammavidu says. Like if you enter
Well, where do
jhana,
you think he got it? Or, excuse me, where do you think I got it? We got it both from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa.
okay, because the green book with the tree on it is totally different than what you guys say. So even people who
We
theoretically are translating
we
Buddha
we
can be
both know that, and we both know that each other know that.
good.
And that
So
we're both dedicated to spreading the Dhamma. We're really Dhamma brothers. And I see Tun coming along strongly in that direction. He's doing a lot of translation into Estonian. I think, in
yes,
fact, he's doing all of the Buddhist Wikipedia stuff in the Estonian language.
he showed me some of it.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
actually
consulted me on some of it.
I'm actually helping to edit the English translation of his latest Estonian book. So I'm getting a dose of Tun Dharma.
Good. You're in the right place. Enjoy yourself well.
I am very glad that the virus came out at this moment so I could stay here longer.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm very glad the virus came out at this moment so I could stay here longer.
Hmm. Yes. Auspicious, they call it.
Now let's rewind about 20 topics of conversation. And your video froze. Are you still there?
I'm sorry, my video is frozen.
Yes. But now you're back.
Okay, all right.
Rewinding a bit, back to the Kalamas. So Kalamas ask, oh, there's so many different teachers, it's very confusing. How do we know who's right? And then Buddha answers about discernment and how you can discern. And then he goes to the Brahma Vihara.
Mhm.
Why does he talk about Brahma Vihara in answer to this question? How does Brahma Vihara help the Kalamas discern the right path among all of the different teachers?
I would say, uh, not knowing for sure, but having the guess based upon many other suttas that I've seen in this regard, is because he knew that they knew already about the Brahma Viharas. So he was teaching them in a context of things that they already knew. That was not new ground for them. And that if you reread the sutta, you'll indicate it will have little snippets of words like "you do know, don't you, about blah blah," and then they will say, "Yes, they do know about it." Okay, so this is his teaching style,
Yes.
and that. this teaching style had the benefit of being slowly or able to slowly bring people around to deeper teachings. But that to tell them the truth immediately is going to throw up defenses because people don't like to be confronted with their delusions. So he had the habit then of gaining the trust
Yes.
of people as he led them down the path. And this is, in fact, the way that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and other monks operate. Because you see, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was not an only. He was part of a clan. And that clan, one of the things was the three tigers. He was one of the three southern tigers because there were other monks that were known to know the Dhamma. And in fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's teacher, his only formalized relationship as with the teacher was with the Samdet Sangharaj, the king, the you could call him the prime minister of the monks or the king of the monks or something like that in Bangkok. His name was Bhikkhu Bodhigosajan, and he's on the internet, and that he had a teacher who was part of the royal family back into the 1920s. Okay, and before that, in fact, that monk was born in 1860. So this is the heritage that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is actually in, and it's well known through Thailand. Um, and so that whole noble quality is kind of well known, and yet somehow in the West they've got the idea that it's special, it's out of sight. Nobody's been enlightened for centuries. They've forgotten how to do it, all of that kind of stuff. Where in fact they have a living noble clan that know each other. It's a community of friends. And so that's back to that quality of metta then, is to gather up that friendship, to start looking at, because if you see the whole world as if it was a friendly place,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a noble quality by itself. That you don't have enemies, you have only friends. And so that also goes right along with that higher fetter. So we, even in the beginning of practice, can start understanding the quality of friendship and developing friendship and not have to say, oh, well, that's a high fetter. My goodness, that's number 8. Gosh, I'll never get past 3. How could I possibly ever get to 8? That's that's a loser's mentality right there. The winner is, got
Yeah.
ya, all right, yeah, I'm going to start being friends with everything.
Nice.
And it leads to the joke about the Dalai Lama when he was in New York at the UN, and he goes out on the street and gets to a hot dog stand, and he's told the hot dog vendor, "Make me one with everything."
I'm missing something.
Make me one with everything. This is the Dalai Lama asking, not make me a hot dog that has everything on it, but make me one with everything is this atonement. This
Yeah.
is that friendship that we're talking about. Is become friends with everything. This is now the quality of metta where it really works. This whole quality of radiating stuff is because you're like a candle and you radiate, or like a joy machine. You just radiate joy. Another one that I like is the quality of being a bucket that's under a faucet. Doesn't matter how fast it's leaking or whether it's pouring in, but eventually that bucket's going to fill up and overflow. The overflow out of that bucket is your metta, and it goes all over the place. It spreads in all 4 directions.
Nice. So
Now
it's like,
we've come out of that whole idea of may the world be happy, and here it is, boys.
it's like he answers the question of the Kalamas, and then he says, okay, here's the Brahma Viharas, and so it's sort of it's more like the next topic. It's not really connected to their question anymore. It's just the next topic he wants to tell them about. Okay.
Well, let's go beyond the Brahma Viharas and come back to this, and let's go on to later in the sutta. What did
Yes.
you talk about next?
He says, well, maybe there's a merit-based afterlife, maybe not, but either way, if you live in the wholesome way now, you won't suffer in the next life if it exists. And if it doesn't exist, then still you will avoid suffering in this life.
Right, exactly. And the reverse of that.
Yes.
That if you do bad in this life, then you're going to get the heck out of it when in the next life. But even if there's no next life, you're still getting it now. You lose in both cases.
Right.
Yes, that's the way of the end of the sutta, but there is also the section where he is talking about sila, morality, and a point to be made on that is not only would you recommend, or not only would you do good action, you would recommend that for others. And I think in someplace else, not only would you abstain from that, but then you would abstain and you would recommend others also abstain. Okay,
Yes.
that those 2 points are actually quite valuable to recognize. In a way, we do have a duty that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was big on, and he referred to as the duty of the Dhamma.
Yes.
So in that way, that's another way, in fact, of spreading the joy. And this is
Teaching
also, go ahead.
teaching the Dhamma is a way of spreading joy.
Yes, exactly. And you can also see this as compassion
Mm-hmm.
to spread the Dhamma, to spread the joy, to see other people suffering, to see the way that things really are. And in that regard, there's a very strong connection between compassion and right noble view. Very strong connection between compassion and right noble view. One of the ways of saying that what is the connection is compassion is the way that we would speak of it in ordinary language, and right noble view would be the noble way of saying it.
I don't understand the connection between compassion and right view.
Well, if you're only thinking of yourself and not seeing about what's going on around you, then that's a selfish view, possibly even a wrong view. It's not a noble, high class view. That your
Right.
noble, high class view takes everyone into consideration.
Okay.
In that regard, I don't think that you can have compassion without right noble view, and you cannot have right noble view without compassion. They are that intertwined.
So right view is like seeing the big picture, not just me and my suffering, but you see everyone and everyone's suffering.
Right.
And is
And
compassion.
and the way that we see that is through investigation. And when to remember, or when we investigate, when we remember to investigate. Exactly. So our investigation is more than egocentric or more than figuring out how our own mind works. But because we do that, we figure out how the human mind works. And to now, compassion automatically arises because we now have new knowledge about how people behave and when they suffer and all of that, because you've been there and you've done that. And so that's how compassion is mixed in with one's right view, so that it does not have to be developed in the sense of the metta by saying a little phrase, may all beings be happy, or imagine the four directions. I like the bucket overflowing better. That'll get it out in four directions, all over the place.
And it's more real.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit
It,
there imagining like, is anything happening? I'm not sure.
all
But if you
right.
know you're happy and then you see your friends at lunch and you can share that with them, then
Yes, that's exactly right. Which, in fact, then brings us to the point of mudita, sympathetic joy. Now, sympathetic joy and compassion and metta are all the same thing, but we're just looking at them from different aspects.
Yeah, or angles on the same thing.
Right. And that is that we are sympathetic with each other, and that it's a very strong, real thing. One way we can talk about it is in the sense of um, humans being social animals, but our entire species, way back when, was also social animals. That's the quality of being a mammal. That insects not so social, alligators, turtles not so social, snakes not so social. But wildebeest, yeah, they collect in the herd. How about a lion? Yeah, they've got pride. Okay, so dogs sleep in the same hole, so that gives rise to new instinctual behavior that comes to us through our genes, and that is the nesting instinct and uh, the uh, the instincts that come with being an animal, including the socialization that we could call this nesting instinct. That, in fact, all of human society right now is just one big nest with a lot of different rooms, but every room has their own kind of rule system. But it's just, we're just an infestation on the planet Earth, and that what joins us together is our set of rules, the rules of our nest. In the sense that if you don't follow the rules of the nest, you get kicked out of the nest. And being out of the nest is dangerous. Or
Yes.
another way of thinking of it is being in a herd, that the middle of the herd is more safe. Therefore, the ones who are the most afraid will tend to get to the middle of the herd so that they can get a lot of company around them for protection. And those that are more fearless will stay on kind of the outside of the herd because they don't want all of that.
Noise, distraction, and yes. Okay.
Okay. So this is all instinctual behavior that we were born with. It's
Gather people around us to feel safe.
right because of that self-preservation instinct that we feel that we must preserve our being alive. And so that means that we have to protect something. What is it that we're protecting? The self. Guess what? We're not in danger. The
But we still,
Kiem is not a dangerous place. So why do we have fear? The answer is because we're trained to be fearful. And we've got just the mechanism to do it, the self-preservation instinct. So in that regard, kids who have problems with a bully are because they're afraid to death of that bully, where in fact, if they were not afraid of the bully would have no power over them. It is all about the fear.
and then how does this link back to sympathetic joy?
This brought us back to sympathetic joy because we're all connected together in that vibration system. That an example of that would be the put a violin that's properly tuned into a room. The trumpet player comes in, plays the note A, and then walks out of the room, and the violin is still singing A. It's the way that the coronavirus is propagated. A bunch of singers get together, one of them's got the coronavirus, and now he's singing all over everybody else, and everybody's going to get sick. That's sympathetic vibration. Another one is one guy is angry and everybody gets angry. A mob is born. Another example is when one guy gets angry when you're alone and he talks to you, his intention is to get you angry. And generally, they're successful at doing it. Even if it's the bank that he's angry at, he can get you to be angry at the bank too. And if you don't get angry, he'll get really pissed off. Okay. This is what we have to do about sympathetic vibration. So, if we are in fact now in control of our own mind, that means that we're the one who is responsible. We're the ones who sees what's going on. It's our job to vibrate at a symphonic level so that others will start to vibrate at that level also, so that we bring about harmony, which goes right back to friendship. That's
Yes.
where we come in with smile, darn you, smile. Let's be friends.
Well,
Go ahead. What?
when you tell the joke, then I smile.
Yes, that's the way.
Yes.
That when you meet a friendly person who is very happy to see you and is filled with joy, then you naturally start to vibrate like that. But it can be done in other ways too. An example is when you're in traffic and there's kids in the car next to you. All you have to do is look at them until you catch somebody's eye, and then you give them a big smile.
And
So
then
this
that
is,
long.
can change their whole day. This is mudita. Not that you're going to go get your joy wherever it may be found, but rather wherever you go, you've got an overflow of joy to spread.
Yeah, so in English we would have friendship, sympathetic joy, compassion.
Hmm.
Okay.
Leading to that Pali word upeka, which has now to do more with the quality of being satisfied and at rest. It is very satisfying to spread joy, like taking a load off. Here, I've
Yeah,
got too many. I've got too many gold bars in my pocket. Please take one.
very nice.
So that's
And
where upeka comes from. It comes from the quality of the feeling of a job well done.
yeah, if you're successful in your anapanasati practice, then you have this sukha from having the job well done.
Hmm.
And then
And
the
so
Brahma.
that's how we train the mind to do this. And now out in the world, we can actually do it because we've got the
Yeah,
training through Anapanasati to actually be out there spreading joy.
I like this way of looking at things.
You can say, thank you, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, because you're right in his lap right now. And so you can see with that kind of teaching how impressed the Thai people have become with, oh, this is what the Dhamma is really all about.
Yeah.
Learning how to be fearless so that we can be friends with each other.
And then jumping out of the Dharma, going back to ourselves. What's your situation now? Are you still a monk?
No, not
Okay.
now.
Because I thought you mentioned the word wife at some point, so I was starting to wonder.
Yeah, got one of them.
So,
Let me put it this way, very, very interesting way, because I would actually I've seen people on the internet and had no way to really contact them. That many people, men, come to Thailand, marry a Thai wife, and then they wind up having struggles and trouble
like,
because this is a matriarchal society. The women run the show. Why is that true? Because they got it from the Buddha. It's actually, we got a sutta. It's sutta number 31 in the Dhinga Nikaya is advice to lay followers of the Buddha. And one of the items on that list is give all the household duties and responsibilities to the wife, because that frees up the guy for activities that are more associated with Dhamma. So he can spend half his day at the Wat instead of half his day arguing with his wife.
normally we would call that patriarchal because the wife does all the housework and then the man gets to be enlightened.
Uh, you'd be surprised at that one. But meanwhile, no, the patriarchal system is that the fathers do the child torture, that the father is responsible for making the money, deciding where we're going to live. Many fairy tale movies is about the man buying a house and then giving it to his wife as a present. You know, that whole 9 yards. That's a patriarchal society. Okay, that the Thai has in government a fairly, let us say, mixed patriarchal and matriarchal, in the sense that in Thailand, though the new king is the son, his older sister really holds the power. She's the one who goes to all of the universities and gives out the diplomas. They don't want the king; they want his sister. And so, where did that come from? It came from good advice to the laymen, and the lay guys will spend part of their life as a monk, then part of their life in a household, and then some later years back in the Wat again. And so, that whole tradition. The reason I'm telling you about that is that's what will give one success as a Westerner living in Thailand, is because you give all of the responsibilities for everything over to the wife, including you go to the doctor when she tells you to go to the doctor. You put on the clothes she wants you to put on, and you kind of go along with everything. Then you'll be really well loved. But most Western guys think, oh, I've got to go do this, that, and the other thing to get my Thai wife to believe in me, and she's yelling at you for everything you're doing because she didn't ask you to do it.
And then from Buddhism, there's this whole story like, oh, you don't need things, you don't need to have a relationship to be happy because it's all inside you. And then, like, I see you, like, oh, quit being a monk. Obviously, you're still interested in Dharma. It's still something important for you. But then you also sort of like have like a wife and a family. It's like, how do those two fit together for you?
Uh, with years and years of practice of dealing with women. Practice, practice, practice. And now is to the point of forget about the past, to use the skills that I've got developed without remorsing about how badly I screwed it up before.
All right.
And I've thought about it, about becoming a monk again. That's always in the back of the mind. But I see no need to do that. That in a way, a ward is like a hospital. And if you're not sick, then you don't need to be there unless you got patients in there and you're a doctor. Okay, so those are the two ways of looking at it. So the monks, the very senior monks, actually have um, a duty to the Dhamma, though it may not be easily seen or obvious, but that
They teach the Dhamma through their words and actions.
yes,
Yes.
yes, Dhamma in action. That's the way to look at it. And while the tradition is slowly undergoing changes that it hasn't had to endure for many centuries, I think it'll survive. I think the Thai mentality and way of doing it will survive, but it will have to go through some transformations. For instance, they've had cell phones now for years, and they've had television for years, and they've been buying new cars for years. But it hasn't, even though there's a lot of housing on the market, people in Thailand still like the old traditional ways. They like the fact that everything is no longer a dirt road, that now the nation's been pretty well paved. But I don't see, and here's an example of it, is this island.
Yeah.
This island, the first time I came here was in 1984, 85, that period.
Yes.
And I knew then that this was the place to be. It's like, hi ho, I found home. Now let me figure out how to learn to live, there and whatnot. And we've been here now since 2012. And in fact, the only time that I've been off the island was one time to go twice to go to Bangkok. Both of them had to do with visas and having to go to the embassy. Other than that, I've been here on the island except to go for visas. And so and I have been a couple of times over to watch and mow. But basically, I've been sitting here, barefoot and happy.
Nice.
Come over. You're invited over. Not this week, but eventually.
Again.
Pardon?
Once I can travel again, then I'm coming.
Excellent. We got a place for you on the porch. Tune has been here several times.
Very nice. Inviting me is dangerous. There's a good chance it could actually show up.
You will be in a long, long line of students who have shown up.
Nice.
Welcome.
Very glad.
It's good to have a lot of friends.
The Brahma Vihara in action.
Precisely, right, as part of the practice.
Very good.
Well, this has been a really good talk. I've enjoyed. I hope that you call again with more questions.
Oh, you only did the first half of the list.
You got a list? All right. Well, we'll continue on next time.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you, Erik.
Catch you later.